Hello, hello, hello. So yes, this, if you don't know already, if you've come this far, like you've seen the other videos, obviously, unless you've randomly clicked on this one for some reason, which can happen because none of us know how YouTube's like recommendation algorithms work, but like, yeah, I assume you know this video series is about the successes and failures of the ANC, or African National Congress Party in South Africa. This video is about one of these successes, and this is about the peace and stability in Africa. There'll be a second video about the failure of peace and stability in Africa, but this one is about the successes. You know, one has to give credit where credit is due. Like, if you have a super, shining child, like a champion, a sweet child, like your child, like those of you who have kids or teachers or whatever, like, this child is still only a human being and isn't exempt from criticism. Like, that child will sometime, somewhere, will steal a cookie from a cookie jar, okay? And that should be reprimanded. Even although like 99.9% of what the child does is good, okay? This is on the one extreme end. On the other extreme end would be this hell angel of a child that freaking breaks every convention and, rule, and is a child of Satan. Okay, that's like too extreme, like, horrible child. But let's say if the child's not a psychopath, if the child's not like Jeffrey Dahmer or something, this child may, like, let's say one morning bring you breakfast in bed, okay, like, which was made from a place of love and, maybe manipulation. But let's say like somewhere horrible person, like, those of you who are in literature, you'll see that quite often, a good book, or a good series of books or a good movie or TV series is where there's character development, like someone changes their character. And like, for example, Theon Greyjoy, the guy who got his dick cut off in like, maybe that was the changing point in Game of Thrones. In the book they didn't, like, in the book they just imply, sorry if I spoil this for you, but it's so old now, Game of Thrones, and probably the guy will never be finished, but Theon Greyjoy's dick gets cut off in the series, the TV series. In the book, like, I don't know, there's maybe a small implication, or it's implied, but not really. Like, it didn't pop to my mind when I read it. In any case, Theon Greyjoy goes through this transformation. Bad people aren't bad all the time. Like, actually, also in Game of Thrones, there was this quote which I really liked, where they spoke to Stannis, and Stannis in, I think it's the first or the second season, he says, like, in every good deed there's a bad deed, in every bad deed there's a good deed. Something like that, yin and yang, and that's very true. Like, so it's the same for the full tenure of the ANC period, April 1994 to March or May 2024. Obviously they're much older than that, but like most of my victories and failures are based on this period, except the story, like the only exception is the historical backdrop. But the overwhelming majority of this is about this period where there's good and bad. And I decided it would be too complicated to integrate both. So I'd rather give both sides of the story and then let it up to you, the viewer, to decide for yourself Like, if you know nothing about the subject, draw your own conclusion. If you know quite a bit about the ANC, whether you hate it or love it, like maybe move out of your echo chamber, or the opposite, have understanding and empathy for someone who finds themselves in an echo chamber. You know, because all of these things are true. I don't want to, you know, sound like a truther. You know, those people are crazy, but I'm just saying, like, consider everything, and then at the very least understand human behavior and human psychology. Like, so without further ado, like, let's get into peace and stability in Africa, the chapter. Beyond South Africa's borders, the African National Congress, or ANC, has played an influential role in promoting peace, stability, and development across the African continent. As a political organization that experienced the hardships of oppression and the triumph of liberation, the ANC has long understood the importance of solidarity with other African nations. The ANC's commitment to peace and stability extends beyond national interests, reflecting a broader vision for a united, peaceful, and prosperous Africa. Over the years, the ANC-led South African government has actively participated in conflict resolution, peace building, and development efforts, positioning South Africa as a diplomatic leader and champion for peace on the continent. So, yes, the South African National Congress has always been like at Pan-African roots. You know, the yellow, green, and black. Yellow means, well, okay, if you're a Pan-Africanist, please correct me if I'm wrong, but, or is it, oh wait, no, the Pan-Africanist flag is red, black, and green. I think, oh yeah, please correct me on this, like, but I'm just going to take a guess, like right now. I think yellow will stand for wealth, green for growth and fertility, and black for the people. That's the ANC's flag. And the Pan-African flag is like Libya's flag. That is, blood is for the struggle, that's red. Green is for fertility and growth, and black is the people. Or maybe in Libya's case, the oil, I don't know. Like, in any case, because Africa was so screwed over by so many different countries, I'm looking at you, Belgium in particular, like, well, all of you, Europe, and me, Afrikaner, we're also a guilty party. But the Belgians, you just took it next level, I'm sorry. It's like, that was next level. You know, because Africa was so fucked over, there's no other words for it. Like, I don't care if this video gets demonetized for that language, but like, there is the sense, of course, that, you know, like, there needs to be solidarity, you know, which is complicated because Africa is the second biggest continent on earth after Asia. You know, to try to, just because all the people look black and, you know, maybe have curly hair, people make the mistake to think that everyone is like similar. That can't be further than the truth. Let's look just for a moment at Asia, okay? Saudi Arabia is part of Asia. You know, look at how those people look. Russia's part of Asia. Look at those people. You know, okay, I know the white Russians are immigrants to the east, but you have like the native, the Aboriginal Russians, what are they called? The Finno-Ugric tribes, the reindeer herders, the Uralic people, you know, those Aborigines, they look totally different. Like Southern Asian, like India, Northern India looks totally different from Southern India. Like your Gujaratis look totally different than your Tamils. Like, they look different than the people of Afghanistan, who look totally different from the people in Thailand, we look totally different from the people in Vietnam. We look totally different than the people, well, not totally, but we look differently than the people in China and Japan. You know, that's just coincidence. Well, I don't know, of course it's not coincidence. Please don't kill me if you're a anthropologist, but I'm just like illustrating diversity. Now you get to say there's actually bigger genetic diversity in Africa than there is in Asia, like, or actually the entire rest of the world, like, because Africa is the oldest continent. It's the birthplace of humanity. Like, some of the populations are genetically very, very varied. Thus, cultures are super varied. Thus, languages are varied. Like, some culture is like very universal. I know, like, Southern Africa, there's this concept of Ubuntu. East Africa may have something similar. Like, yeah, East Africa has Uhuru. And these are like cultural concepts that's shared by multiple nations, but for the finer details, like, let's say, initiation ceremony, or the way, like, in South Africa by itself, like, Xhosa people, please correct me if I'm wrong, but like, I once spoke to a Xhosa man or student, or like master student, and he told me, like, apparently the difference between the Xhosas and the Zulus is that the Zulu has like this united monarchy that, you know, you only like basically you're like it's the same as the UK, you know, you're born a king, whereas the Xhosas have a democratic system where basically you still have nobility, but the nobility is chosen. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But in any case, and then there's this other African tribe. Is it the Vendas? I don't know who they are. I forgot what they are called. But they have a reign queen, or they have a religious figure, like the Pope, or what's that guy in Iran, a mullah, or a, what do you call it? Not the Maharaja, no, not the Maharaja. Ayatollah. But she's a reign queen. Like, her name's Mujaji, or the title is Mujaji or something, or the place. And it's just, you know, she's the leader. So, and it's a woman, you know, like, so it's just, this is just South Africa, you know, and South Africa is not the most diverse African country. Like, Mozambique, as we have like 11 or 14 languages in South Africa. Mozambique has like 30. The Congo has a shitload. Like, so it's just this diversity, it was taken advantage of by colonizers, and that's why it was so easy. One of the reasons it wasn't just technology, it was basically the fact that people weren't united. There was like, if let's say in the year 1400, the entire Africa spoke a single language, like French or Swahili or Arabic or whatever, like one language, and there was like one system of trade or one set of rules, you know, like how tribes would trade with each other. Like, Africa would not have been colonized, because then there's some form of like cooperation. Like, Africans are very bitter, righteously so, about colonization. There's like so many stories. Like, I watched this, another brutal colonization effort were the Germans. Sorry, I'm mentioning you Germans, like all Europeans are, and Arabs as well to an extent, in East Africa, like Zanzibar, whatever, like, were responsible for this brutality. And like, they used a lot of like divide and conquer, and then they drew these like artificial borders. If you look, like, one of the starkest examples, go and look at Algeria. It looks like a, you know, what's that shape? A diamond shape almost. just like lines arbitrarily drawn in the sand. And then when the Berber tribes cross it with their camels, they just, well, Toyotas, I don't know how they travel, but like they just cross this border, like, you know, and sometimes they don't have IDs for the other nation. Like another example is like Namibia. That is just this whoosh, line straight down, you know, like another way they just divided the continent was just like rivers. Rivers are natural borders in most places of the world, but it's a fallacy to assume that, you know, a group of people are just going to stay on one side of the river and not on both. Because remember, river is a traffic way. It's a resource in terms of water and fish. And like the Chinese went all the way, you know, up the Yangtze River. You know, that's their civilization. You know, like the similar thing with the, what's that river in, like, in Brazil? I can't believe I forgot it. Like that river in Brazil, the Amazon River. Like you had, like, the Portuguese noted that you would like have tribes and they lived on both sides of the river because it's just, you know, it's useful. So you have to cross the river, yes, but like that's just how people live. And then you will like have, like, for example, like in the Congo, you have like Congo, Brazzaville, and Congo, DRC. So Brazzaville and Kinshasa is just like across the river, which is kind of crazy. You know, it's like Budapest. You know, like the only difference is Budapest is Hungary. It's one country. Like here, you just like separated people, and then there's this freak. Of course, there's going to be conflict. You know, and conflict's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to retard or impede like trade, development, agriculture, all of these things, logistics. And then, you know, this is what Africa struggles with. This is why Pan-African, one of the reasons I want to do a video on Pan-Africanism with my limited knowledge and ignorance, like, but just to put my viewpoint across, and then we can argue and debate about it, like, and then hopefully in the comment section there can be a more like diverse and combined like discussion to, you know, stop nationalistic violence, potential violence breaking out, you know, like just understanding, peace, understanding, dialogue, and then later cooperation and trade. Like, yeah, so getting back to Pan-Africanism, sorry, that was just a tangent, but I like telling stories. Like, getting back to Pan-Africanism, so it exists for that reason, you know, like that Africans are very bitter that they seem to have been divided by outside forces. To an extent still, you have outside forces like the US and China who come in with basically unequal treaties, like, you know, to force, especially if it's a weak, well, sorry, Congolese, but you are weak. And I mean that with respect and empathy, not because I think I'm superior to you. It's just you are being taken advantage of outside forces because you are not as united as you possibly can be. It still happens. And Africa, you know, this is why Pan-Africanism is this perennial, like, political idea. Because, like, you know, it's about unity and there's strength in unity. And I think if you look at my farm murder video, I spoke a bit about Julius Malema. I'm going to make a video about him as well. But there's one thing I agree with strongly with Mr. Malema is the idea of Pan-Africanism, in the sense that Africa should be like the European Union. There should be free movement, you know, eventually like a common currency, something like that, because it will make our lives easier. and we all identify as African, even if you're like a far-right Afrikaans person. I'm a centrist Afrikaner person, maybe even like a liberal leaning, but I try to be in the center because I believe in the center most of the common sense can be found and most of the truth can be found. But even if you're a far-right Afrikaner, you're still identifying as African. Like, yes, you identify as Afrikaans or Afrikaner, but Afrikaner is found only in Africa. It's not found in Europe. We are very different than the Europeans. Like, not extremely different because we're like descendants of the Europeans. But there's a 400 year difference between Afrikaners and Europe. I've been to Europe. It's a very different place. Like, in fact, I went to the Netherlands and, dude, it was like, I was like, sorry, Dutch people, but I found it to be rude. I found the Dutch to be rude and unhelpful. You know, like I was in Amsterdam and people just ignored me. Like, you know, if I was asking for directions. And the Dutch, they understood me because I spoke in English, you know, even although Afrikaans is like similar to Dutch, I spoke in English. And my English, well, you can judge for yourself, but, you know, okay, my English isn't great, but, you know, it's not bad. Like, and like the Dutch's English is very good as well. And they just freaking ignored me. It was very annoying. Italy was very friendly, and Switzerland, those are countries, the only countries I visited. But yeah, bottom line is, to a certain extent, Afrikaner people are also very conservative. So in that sense, we resemble Africans more because Africans are also very conservative. If you'll see, for example, the Catholic Church breaking up the day that you legalize, well, you can, you know, homosexuality is a different like argument. I'm just saying, like, the view on homosexuality, for example, or transgender, like the moment the Catholic Church approves that, you'll see a schism in the Catholic Church where the Africans go their own way. And that's just a fact. Like, it's unacceptable for most Africans. Like, and in that, you know, so there is this common African culture. And this is where Pan-Africanism comes in. And this is why the ANC wanted peace and stability in Africa. The ANC's solidarity with other African nations has deep roots. During the apartheid era, South Africa's liberation movement received substantial support from African countries, especially those in the Southern African Development Community, or SADC. Nations like Zambia, Tanzania, and Mozambique provided sanctuary to ANC exiles and resources for the liberation struggle, even at a great cost to their own stability and security. Recognizing this historical support, the ANC-led government has continued to foster close ties with African countries, championing policies that promote unity, economic cooperation, and peaceful coexistence. So yeah, like I mentioned, just a quick mention about going back into history again, apartheid. Oh my God. I'm sorry, on this channel, like, you'll hear apartheid a lot because I'm South African and most of the stuff I know I can talk about would be about apartheid. I can talk about Monaco, but geez, I know very little. It would be just like me reading a script and not being able to comment on almost anything. I can do a lot of commenting, you know, about South Africa, but it's very difficult to talk about South Africa without talking about apartheid because it has had an impact. Like, just as it's difficult talking about South Africa without mentioning the ANC because it's like a 30-year government. So, of course, like, you're going to mention it. In any case, so the ANC, if you look at South Africa, like, it's a lot like, it's a bit like Argentina or Ukraine. There's a lot of grasslands and stuff. We have deserts. We have like a proper desert, like in the northwest, the Namib Desert, which is beautiful, by the way. Or the Kalahari Desert. Sorry, the Kalahari Desert. And wait, we have a bit of the Namib Desert as well. It's two deserts. And the Kalahari Desert is gorgeous, by the way. I've been there. It's like, it's got this red sand. It's beautiful. Like, the sand also makes a noise I'm serious, like if the wind blows over it, the sand, the structure of the dune and the structures of the grains and the atmosphere combine to create an audible effect. And like, we have grassland, we have a bit of jungle, very little. It's like not a proper jungle, and we have bush, or like African bush. Like African bush, if you look at it, it's not as easy to hide in African bush. And we have some like mountains, but they're not very high. They're like lowish mountains. It's nothing like you have in like, the mountains we have is the size of the Australian mountains. Like, the mountains, like, it's nothing like you have in Asia, Europe, or North America or South America. So a guerrilla organization, it's difficult to hide away, you know, like in all of these places. In the grassland, you'll just be spotted, you know, like, so it's a difficult operation. Like, MK, Umkhonto we Sizwe, or the Spear of the Nation, there was like some difficulty for them operating. You'll have to, like, let's say, operate at night. You'll have to use a lot of disguise, hide your weapons away, as did the guerrillas in Uruguay and Argentina, because there's like fewer places to hide. It's not like Colombia or Afghanistan where it's easy to hide. So what they did to evade the government was essentially go abroad, like in the neighboring countries, and set up bases there for training, logistics, continuing their narrative, or their propaganda work. Just like living quarters for people who have been exiled, or people who are under threat of being arrested. So, of course, the apartheid government didn't leave these camps alone, because, well, it was like, it's a security threat. So they attacked these camps in the neighboring African countries, and they were very good at it. The apartheid government was had a very good military, and they would attack these camps or attempt to attack them, and then if the host country's army get in the way, or their people, they just become collateral damage. So the neighboring countries suffered quite a bit, in all of this. At one stage, the government, the apartheid government, signed a treaty with Mozambique and I believe with Zimbabwe to limit cross-border operations, but it was only partial. It's like you can't stop it totally. So there is this link between us and our neighbors, and hence the development community, the Southern African Development Community, or SADC. That's the closest we have to the European Union. You have ECOWAS in West Africa, but they're kind of weak. Now you have the East African Development Community. They're getting stronger, but the strongest one I still believe is SADC, so Southern African Development Community. And it's because of obviously geography. It's easy, the roads are pretty interlinked, but it's also because of history. And some tribes just cross the border, spill over the borders, is it maybe the Ndebele tribe, definitely the Sotho tribes, because we have Tswanas in South Africa, and then Botswana is just next to us. So you know, a lot of shared history. Like many of the languages are mutually intelligible. Yeah. One of the ANC's most notable contributions to peace on the African continent has been his role in mediation and conflict resolution. South Africa has often served as a mediator in conflicts across Africa, drawing on its experience of negotiation and reconciliation during its own transition to democracy. In the 1990s and early 2000s, South Africa played a key role in mediating peace processes in countries like Burundi, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Lesotho. The ANC-led government's emphasis on inclusive dialogue and reconciliation has been instrumental in helping these countries reach peace agreements, facilitating transitions to more stable governments and averting further violence. So this was done like Zuma was less effective, but President Mbeki was super effective at this. Like, you know, people would, not always, but like people viewed him with a certain amount of respect. And it was like South Africa was seen as a neutral country. Like, so it was easier to do conflict resolution with the help of the ANC. So especially in, well, the DRC unfortunately still has war, but it used to be worse. It used to engulf the entire country. Now it's just some rebels in the east, supported by Uganda. What's it, M23? Yeah, it's M23. Those guys are nuts, by the way, but like, possibly evil, but like, and supported by Uganda and Burundi and Rwanda. But yeah, South Africa has had like some successes in establishing peace on the African continent. One of the most significant cases of South Africa's diplomatic intervention was in Burundi. In the late 1990s, Burundi was in the midst of a civil war marked by ethnic violence and political instability. South Africa, under the leadership of former President Nelson Mandela and later President Jacob Zuma, took a mediating role, facilitating negotiations between Burundi's government and various rebel groups. Mandela's emphasis on reconciliation and justice resonated with the Burundian leaders and the broader international community. The peace process eventually led to the Arusha Peace and Reconciliation Agreement in 2000, which helped stabilize Burundi and paved the way for democratic elections. The ANC's approach to Burundi's crisis exemplified its commitment to African unity and the principle that peace is achieved through dialogue. So I just want to say something about I'm just going to say something about Zuma. He's very, very, very excellent, stupendously good with people. So, like, if he goes into a room, you know, people just feel at ease, like he makes people laugh, he relaxes people. They used him extensively in South Africa for, like, to create peace between Zulus and the ANC, like, because that's just the kind of person he is. Not with the stature of Mandela, though, because, well, Mandela's the ultimate icon. But, you know, Zuma's, like, efforts was crucial and, you know, can't be erased. In addition to mediation, the ANC-led government has contributed to peacekeeping efforts on the continent. South Africa has deployed peacekeepers to various African countries as part of the United Nations and African Union or AU missions. South African peacekeepers have served in conflict zones in the DRC, Sudan, and the Central African Republic, working to protect civilians, support disarmament, and facilitate the reintegration of former combatants. These peacekeeping missions have not only promoted stability in conflict-affected areas, but also demonstrated South Africa's commitment to upholding human rights and protecting vulnerable populations. So yeah, like in the DRC, Sudan, and Central African Republic, we had peacekeeping troops there. It was a bit expensive though, like we didn't get a lot of support for it, and some of our troops weren't trained adequately for the problems at hand. And I know at one stage when it looked at once like Omar al-Bashir visited South Africa, and at that stage, or still, or is it, as the guy died? I don't know if he's still alive or dead, but like at that stage he was president of Sudan, and he was wanted for war crimes by, what do you call it, what's the organization? The International Criminal Court in Den Haag had an arrest warrant out for him. So South Africa as a signatory was supposed to arrest him. And like when it looked like we may arrest him, like our base, like the army base in Sudan, was surrounded by like artillery of the Sudanese government. And yeah, there was like quite a few troops there, like maybe 50 or 100. So we had a choice, like arrest Omar al-Bashir or have our troops killed brutally in the DRC, in Sudan. So the ANC chose wisely, I think. Wasn't worth the while to, from a pragmatic point of view, to arrest the guy. I mean, if you feel so strongly about arresting him, go and fetch him, like from Sudan, like pick him up in a military operation like America got Osama bin Laden, which is a motherfucker in his own right, by the way. Okay. The ANC's peacekeeping efforts are closely aligned with its support for the African Union, AU, the continent's primary body for promoting peace, security, and development. South Africa has been an active member of the AU and has played a leadership role in strengthening the organization's peace and security framework. Through the AU Peace and Security Council, the ANC-led government has supported initiatives aimed at preventing conflict, including early warning systems, mediation support, and capacity building for peace operations. The ANC support for the AU reflects its vision of African self-reliance, where African nations take the lead in addressing their own security challenges. South Africa, under ANC leadership, has also supported the concept of African solutions to African problems. This philosophy emphasized the importance of African-led peace initiatives, where local leaders and institutions drive conflict resolution processes with minimal foreign intervention. The ANC has consistently advocated for the sovereignty and autonomy of African nations, opposing foreign interference in African affairs. This stance has resonated across the continent and has helped the ANC build strong alliances with other African leaders who share commitment to self-determination and Pan-Africanism. So, this is a good idea, because like African solutions to African problems, it's like European solutions to European problems, people with a similar culture and similar values would be more prone to success, with regards to a certain problem, so this was kind of a good idea. And the ANC started pushing for, it still does, for sovereignty and autonomy, which kind of endeared it to many African countries. Like we were one of the leaders, South Africa was one of the leaders to ask for a permanent seat for Africa in the International Security Council, which is a mess, by the way. That thing is so illegitimate. Like, how come 5 countries only have have veto rights, and they can make or break any other country's like future, or determine their fate? This thing is like so antiquated. The world will be better off, I believe, without the United Nations than with it, because I believe because of these veto powers, like it just retards everything. Like, the only way the United Nations can work is if every nation gets one vote. And even then you can say it may be unfair, because like India, if if India and China and the US and Brazil have much larger populations, and they may ask for larger votes. They would say, how come Iceland have one vote and we only get one vote? And then you may argue like, yeah, but okay, we're culturally so different and you'll bully us. But, bottom line is the Security Council with 5 members, with 5 vetoes, that's nonsense. It shouldn't work like that. In addition to peace and security, the ANC-led government has promoted economic cooperation and development across Africa, recognizing that sustainable peace is linked to economic prosperity. South Africa has been a driving force behind initiatives such as the New Partnership for Africa's Development, or NEPAD, which aims to foster economic integration, infrastructure development, and poverty reduction across the continent. NEPAD reflects ANC's belief that African nations must work together to address the root causes of poverty and inequality, which often fuel conflict. By supporting economic development, the ANC has sought to create more stable and prosperous Africa where all nations can thrive. With regards to NEPAD, it's been on NEPAD. I think the pronunciation is maybe NEPAD, not NEPAD. I think it has had mixed success because of a limited budget. Because there's 56 African countries, 54, 58 African countries, many. And getting all of these people, to develop all of them. And there's only 4 big economies: South Africa, Ethiopia, Egypt, Nigeria. These 4 countries can't help all of the other countries. It's impossible. So NEPAD is only, at a limited success. I'm going to say this for the 10th time, but unfortunately I have to say, just to put it into context, NEPAD comes from a place of love. Okay, it's a good idea. It doesn't work for various reasons, mostly because of lack of money and political will, but it's not a bad idea. Under the ANC's leadership, South Africa has also played a significant role in establishing and supporting the Southern African Development Community, or SADC, a regional organization focused on economic cooperation and political stability in Southern Africa. South Africa has worked with SADC to address regional security issues, promote free trade, and support infrastructure development. The ANC's commitment to SADC has helped strengthen regional integration, creating a foundation for mutual support and collaboration in addressing common challenges. The ANC's contribution to peace and stability in Africa has also extended to, SADC, sorry, SADC is super important. I mentioned it earlier in the video, but if you're an economist or a diplomat or something, or a trade economist, someone with cross-national borders, please comment, tell us more about how SADC helps your business, or if it impedes it, tell us why it impedes it and how it can be improved. But for me personally, I don't have a business. well, I've got this YouTube channel, but it's not a business really. Like, I mean, a proper business where you trade like with trucks across a border, you know, like you send machinery, you receive like some agricultural products, whatever, or like services-based industries. Like, for me personally, just as a civilian, I only need to flash my passport to go into another SADC country. That's like what South Africa, Lesotho, Swaziland, Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Malawi, and Zambia. Those 9, I think those are the 9. I can go into those countries with just my passport and I don't need a visa. Like, so it's super easy to travel. Like, I just go, like, I've been in Mozambique multiple times. There's this music festival called Strap. There was another one called FOR, F-O-R-R, but they stopped it, unfortunately, or they may have. I want to check on the internet if it still exists. Like, a lot of the stuff, sometimes I feel like a hippie. Like, there was this other music festival as well, Opikopi, like just a bit of this countercultural rock fest in South Africa. It no longer exists because it became violent. Like, people, like, you know, they would break into people's cars at Opikopi. I'm going to do a video about Opikopi. That's a fucking good idea. Like, they broke into people's cars, they stole stuff, they would like take knives and cut people's tents open while the people were at the dance stages and the rock stages and steal their stuff. And then the organizers were like, you know, hands up, we can't do this anymore. In any case, so I went to Mozambique multiple times, probably like 10 times to go to this festival. And it's very cool. Like, you just go, passport gets stamped, go in, super easy. Let's go on. The ANC contributes to peace and stability in Africa. They have also extended to humanitarian support for countries affected by natural disasters, food insecurity, and other crises. South Africa has provided humanitarian aid to African countries facing problems. So, yeah, like, essentially, there is like, when there was like famine in Zimbabwe, because of like, okay, some sanctions, but mostly their own incompetence in dealing with their land reform. We assisted with like some famine relief. We insisted Mozambique as well with like agricultural and famine relief. Like when they had flood problems, we assisted them. Yeah, like the only countries we didn't assist was Namibia and Botswana because they always have their shit together. Like, if you, like, I call it like the usual suspects. If you look at the map, you know, these world maps, especially from The Economist. Now, I know some of you hate The Economist, but, you know, this is generally true. You'll see some countries are always red. You know, like some are green and some are red and then some are blue. Like the United States will be blue, like Iceland will be navy blue, Argentina will be a light blue, South Africa will be a pink, Mozambique will be a orange, you know, Afghanistan will be blood dark maroon red, and like Namibia and Botswana are green. They're green zones, like in the sense that they always have their shit together, like freedom of press, the economy is stable and growing, like there's like almost no corruption, there's a lot of competence, freedom of movement, no, very little crime. So great countries, to visit. Like, in any case, that concludes my chapter on the ANC's foreign successes. Also, just like to, I think I didn't mention, overseas relationships. So one of the coolest things, I'm not going to say the coolest thing. One of the cool things about South Africa is that we are neutral. Like now it's leaning more towards China and Russia. I don't have a big problem with China. We know there are some value clashes, which is a problem. I think India and Brazil are closer allies for us than China. But I don't have a problem with China. I've got a big problem with Russia. I don't have a problem with you Russian people. I have Russian friends. I have a problem with the Russian government. And I don't have a problem with you Russian government official at the border stamping passports. I don't have a problem with you Russian official looking after the safety of tigers and bears in the Siberia. I don't have a problem with you Russian official who is head of the fishery or who is monitoring the health of fish in Russian rivers. I've got a problem with the so-called Siloviki and Putin, because those people are just oligarchs, warmongers. They will try to suck the blood out of foreign countries, including Africa. But South Africa is neutral. Now, we're leaning a bit towards China now, but we have good relations with Russia, which is useful because it's a big nuclear nation, lots of nuclear weapons. We have good relations with the US. The US have granted us the so-called AGOA Pact, which was done due to a large part by the ANC, not the apartheid government. The ANC established this trade pact where our products go into the US tariff-free. This may change, this is November 2024. It may change under the Trump government. Possibly not, because South Africa is big, but in comparison to the US, we're so small economically and even population-wise that Trump will probably not even pay attention to us. Because of that, our trade relation would probably also be saved. There was some talk in Congress about removing AGOA because South Africa supported oh yes, I know, because we sued at Israel, which is a good thing. We should have sued Hamas as well, because Hamas freaking killed 1,000 Israelis. Now what Israel did was way, to be honest, what Israel did is 40 times worse than what Hamas did, because they killed 1,000 Hamas killed 1,000 Israelis, and the Israelis killed 40,000 Palestinians. 40,000 divided by 1,000 is 40. So I understand, look, these Middle Eastern people, including the Israelis, have a different system, a tooth for a tooth, an eye for an eye. It's your system. I'm okay with it if it works for you. I don't want it. I think it's cruel and unusual, but who am I to criticize your culture? I'm nobody. As long as you don't criticize mine, I won't. Well, I kind of criticize it now, but I wouldn't criticize it in your own country for my own safety as well. But look, I'm not really anyone to judge someone else's culture, but we righteously sued Israel. We should have sued Hamas as well. To be neutral and to be truly fair. We should have sued Hamas. However, we did sue Israel, which is the right thing. Because, to prove my point, a lot of countries, especially Chile, which is a super neutral country and a very nice, liberal It's a good country. I lived there for a while. Like, they joined us in the court, to bring this indictment against Israel. So, like, these super hawks or these like super pro-Israel people, the lobby in like the US Congress, like the lower house, they were like, oh, how dare you like attack the Israelis, like, in a court of justice, we're going to take away your trade privileges. Like, but that didn't really go anywhere. And the other thing is, remember, like, China is moving like rapidly into Africa and South America. Just today I read like they opened or they finished the last touches of an upgrade to this Peruvian port, which will now be one of the biggest ports in the Pacific, built by the Chinese. And look, because South Africa is friendly towards China, we're still relatively neutral. But if the US pushes us into a corner, we will simply have closer ties with China. Because, like, the Chinese also ask fewer questions. Like, sometimes Europe in particular can be overbearing, like in the sense that they, when I spoke about the green energy, like they would insist on this. They refuse to understand the fact that we need coal in the short term. China doesn't have a problem with that. China understands where we are, and they would just like help us. Now, look, China shouldn't be trusted in absolutely all circumstances. You should never trust 100% everybody in your life, even your mother. Your mother isn't an angel. Your mother can be 99.99% or 99.999% loyal and trusted, okay? But you can't trust them like in absolutely everything. If she catches you smoking, she'll tell your father. Okay, so, well, look, we South Africa, did the right thing. And what's going to happen if the US pushes us too much, whether it's Trump or whether it's the next administration, J.D. Vance or whoever comes after him, we will have closer relations with China, and China may put up a military base in Simonstown. Or you will see at the very least Chinese ships starting to visit Simonstown in South Africa. Simonstown is the gateway between the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. And if you want to be cut out of the Indian Ocean, if you want to be cut out from the Atlantic, occupy Simonstown, or the opposing force should do that. So, and both China and the United States know this. Like, this was one of the reasons the apartheid government received aid or was abetted by the West for so long, is we controlled the southern route. The apartheid government wasn't that powerful. We couldn't stop, Soviet submarines, but we could stop Soviet shipping, like by bombing, with aerial bombing. But so this is like in our favor, and this is one of the strengths of the ANC, is their ability to stay neutral. Like we've got good relations with Cuba, for example. Like we have good relations with European countries. No one has a problem with us, there's very few people I'm scared of. I'm scared of ISIS because ISIS is freaking insane. And I won't visit North Korea, and I won't visit Somalia because those are failed states. My safety won't be guaranteed there. But I'll be safe in Russia. I'll be safe in the United States, in Europe, in South America. And it's because of my passport. Okay, the passport, like, it doesn't get, you know, it's not visa free everywhere. Like for Europe, you have to get the Schengen visa, and there's no visa cooperation between us and the European Union because our passports are seen as being corrupted, and they are. Like, this is a failure. But like, in the spirit of the success part of this video, we get along with so many countries. Like, it's very useful. You know, I feel very relieved being a South African, being neutral. I like being neutral. Like, yeah, sometimes when there's a great evil in the world, like the Nazi Germany or the Soviet Union, yeah, then you should like pick a side, or pick the side of the good, okay, over the side of the evil. But in general, it's just way better to be neutral. You know, like, especially if there's like a trade war or an actual war or a Cold War. If you're neutral, like India, for example, during the Cold War, it would have been much more comfortable for India because they were neutral. Like, you know, there's no stress about being attacked and stuff, okay, except from Pakistan. But I mean, like, you don't have to fear, like, you know, Russia or the United States, like, because you're neutral. And that's all I want to say about the ANC's foreign successes and peace in Africa. And thank you for listening to my rantings and ravings. I hope you learned something from this video. If you're a diplomat, if you worked for the foreign service, if you like have any knowledge of South Africa's efforts overseas, if you have had experience with it, if you can give a super forecast for the future, please let us know in the comment section with like some proof and evidence. That will be great. Thank you so much and have a nice day.